we've got to understand that it's really easy to use these editing apps, and most of our kids have them. I've been working in schools long enough and asking kids, you know, oh, just do the littlest modification, or I put on a filter. Most kids will use a filter that is still editing your photo. So what's happening is they are getting a love heart, a tick, a whatever it might be, you know, sizzling fire, all that kind of stuff, which then tells them that that photo is now enough, right? That validation needs to come from ourselves.
Yeah.
So the more likes and comments we get on a photo that we've posted that has potentially been edited, we then believe we're not enough as we are. And it's just, as a parent, just to be aware that, again, there's so many videos out there where it can be quite damaging to their health, so to speak. Again, just by watching this particular content, and then the algorithm, because they like that content, sends them more of the same. Day in and day out, they all receive the similar content that can become quite damaging to their health. Unfortunately, what big tech designed to do, they designed to steal our attention from our intention.
Yep.
Yeah, so our kids, unfortunately, because social media prize on our negative bias and our emotional reactions, it will continue to send you the content that triggers you and makes you sick, unwell, and unmotivated. And that's for us adults as well. Wired as humans for connection. So again, big tech are super smart by doing things like the like button and the fire emoji and the love hearts and all of the things. They tap into that emotional part of our brain that sparks dopamine. And of course, we jump on our phones for more the first thing in the morning when we wake up. Wake up in the morning and, you know, where we've had a bit of a rest, our nervous system has had an opportunity to relax. And I'll talk about the layers of the nervous system in a moment. If we, you know, wake up in the morning and we roll over and we get up and we pick it up, and of course the first thing again that our kids usually do is go on some sort of social media or gaming and get into that space, we straight away put ourselves in another world, right? Which means we're actually not present with what's here. We haven't tuned into how we feel. We haven't checked into our body kind of thing. We haven't checked into our like mental or emotional state. And we potentially have seen something. Sorry, I'm using a book for a phone because I don't have my phone here. This is a phone, but I'm potentially seeing something that triggers me, right? Again, I might see something or someone that's been edited, and I might then compare that with my body, whether it be a boy or a girl. Yeah, that is then going to run the course of my day. So, who of you guys here that's had a day like that, right? So, say you haven't slept very well. You pick up your phone and you're on that for 10 minutes or something like that, and you're like, oh, this is great. Then you see your emails. Who's checked their emails in bed? Yeah. And again, you're still in bed at that point, right? Haven't done any movement, haven't done anything. It's no wonder we start to feel like shit, because we then are like, oh, look at the day I'm about to have. And guess what? You get up and you spill your coffee, right? You get stuck in traffic and someone cuts you off. You have a bit of road rage, or that person has road rage. You get a meeting with your boss, right? You're late for work, right? You forget to pick up the groceries for your wife, and your whole day is a knock-on effect. Who's had one of those? Or a few?
Yeah.
Okay? So it's so important what we do in the morning first up, because the moment you pick up a device, you give your power away. You are giving your energy and your time and attention to something that is going to drain your energy, right? We all know that when we're talking to someone, right, and they have their phone in their hand, right, we immediately feel second off. Who's experienced that before? They might just be holding their phone in their hand or have it on the table, right? But it makes me feel insignificant because she's saying the phone is more important than me, right? If we wake up and we feel anxious or sad or unmotivated or judgmental or critical, right, before we even start our day, those feelings send our nervous system into a state of protection, okay? Right? Immediately, the body has got the cues that the world around us is unsafe. Yeah? So this vehicle here is going to have a somatic, and somatic being in the body, right? The body is going to do something based on that emotional reaction, right? Remember, the body is always listening to us and the body comes first. So if we've looked into our phone and we are now comparing ourselves with an image that we have seen on YouTube, or, you know, we might be into, as I said, it might be even into gaming with that as well. And even the images we see onto there or whatever, and it just dulls us down and we feel flat and unmotivated and don't want to get up into our day. That emotional response is going to have a physical reaction into the body, okay? Judgment, comparison, as I said before, anger, frustration, resentment, jealousy, righteousness is all going to close the body, and it's going to go into a protection mode. So our kids, because that's who we're talking about here, are going to start their day and already their back might be up a little bit. They might feel stressed, they might feel anxious, and they might be struggling with their thoughts. We want to start to recognize what that looks like into the body, because if that's a pattern that continues to happen, right, the kids then get used to it, their body then gets used to it, and their nervous system, of course, gets used to being in a bit of a rigid and hypervigilant state. Yeah, does that make sense? And of course, over time, what's going to happen is the body then will burn out, and that's when we move a little bit further down the ladder and our kids become dissociated, they become numb, they don't want to go outside, and the thoughts become a bit darker. The polyvagal theory was introduced by a gentleman called Dr. Stephen Porges, and that was in the late 1990s. He did a lot of research into the nervous system to dive a little bit deeper into the states of the autonomic nervous system. Right? Our autonomic nervous system is again designed to protect us, looks after our basic needs, our organs, our breath, our safety and our survival, right? And he looked into it to kind of explore where our body goes when we shift in between the states, right? What I'm going to get you guys to visualize or even draw onto your piece of paper, if you just draw a ladder like down the page and just, you know, have probably about 10 rungs of the ladder, it'll give you a nice visual into this. And again, you'll see it when you come into the notes, but it's an easy way to understand the functioning of the autonomic nervous system. Okay. At the very top of the ladder, right, I want you to just write. Yeah. All right. In the middle of the ladder, okay, I want you to write the words fight, flight. And that simply means mobilized.
Is that on the next run down?
That's about the middle of the ladder, Andrew.
Yep.
Yep, so go about the middle of the ladder. Yep.
Yep, and go fight or flight.
Fight, flight, yep. And it's also known as mobilized. Yep, and at the bottom of the ladder, right, I want you guys to write the words freeze. And that's shut down or dissociation. The bottom of the ladder, our freeze state, is also known as dorsal. So you can write that word down too. So D-O-R-S-A-L. Now with that in front of you, again, it's a really simple description. So look at that ladder as your nervous system, right? What Dr. Porges discovered is that our parasympathetic branch has two states, and that's at the top of the ladder and the bottom of the ladder. We have our ventral state and we have our dorsal state. Now, both of those parasympathetic states are very different. Our dorsal state, right, is immobilized. So my body is immobile, right? But it's immobile with fear. Okay, it's basically moved into a state of shutdown, right? I can't really move. I've gone into fear and my body is immobilized. At the top of the ladder, our ventral state is immobilized with safety. So I'm relaxed, I'm open, right? I can be present, but I feel safe. You feel safe with me, I feel safe with you. Now at the middle of the ladder, you'll notice that it says fight, flight. And that's our mobilized state. So in fight, flight, our body goes into mobilization. The shoulders come up, right? The breath goes to the chest. And you might feel sick in the belly and you go into tension like this. The armor comes on. A diagram. Let's have a think about just our normal work day. I'm just going to talk as adults for a moment here, right? The things that keep us balanced are linked into our primal or our reptilian brain, okay? That's sleep, sex, digestion, food, movement, and breath, right? And shelter. If we lose any of those things or they're not being looked after, how do we feel?
Not great. Connected.
Yep, totally.
Yeah.
If we're not moving well, if we're not eating well, right? If we're not getting enough sleep, too much screen time, all of that thing, if we're not connecting with other humans, if our shelter is taken away from us, we start to feel what? Stressed, yeah? A little bit ungrounded, unsettled, anxious, yep? We start to feel a bit fearful, yep? So if we think about it, again, I'm just talking about a average human here who gets up, wakes up, goes to work, deals with traffic, etc., right? If we don't get enough sleep and we wake up and we jump on our phone first thing in the morning, we don't do any movement, we go to Macca's for breakfast, we get in the car and we go and do our 9 to 5 work day, so to speak, our basic needs are not being met. What happens over time is that we move from the top of the ladder that you can see there in front of you, down a few rungs into what's called our mobilized state. We know this is chronic stress. What we feel is tension. We have struggle with our digestive organs. We can feel tight and rigid. The hips become really sore. The lower back becomes really sore. We become reactive with ourselves and our partners. We can become judgmental. We can become more angry and frustrated and reactive, not responsive. Yep. So the same goes in our kids. It's exactly the same nervous system, right? So once again, if our kids are spending over 5 hours a day on their phones, guess what? They are going to move down into a mobilized state. And you can see it in them. You can really see it in the kids. They're holding it in their shoulders. They might have spurts of anger or say things and you're like, wow, where'd that come from? Right? Bless you if that was a sneeze. And you can see the tension in the kids. Does that make sense? Have you guys experienced that? Yeah, they might be fighting with their siblings or yelling at one another or yelling at you, and it's a reactive state. Yeah. So we all know this mobilized state very, very well, right? In the Western world, we tend to live there. We tend to be on the go all the time. We don't stop. So our bodies are getting used to living in this state. We are nature. Nature is us. If we continue to live in this state and also our kids, guess what happens? Burn out. So if you go down the ladder further, right, and what you've written at the bottom of the ladder there says freeze.
Yep.
Okay, I've said that's an immobilized state, right, where our bodies now are numb. It looks very different. It looks like this. Can you see? That is very different to someone who is angry, like that. Very, very different. You guys have teenagers, right? You know when your teenager is pissed off, okay? And they're judging or whatever it might be. But if your teenager is dissociated, they are going to go inwards, right? They're going to move into a dissociated state. They might feel like they don't want to talk and they might jump on their phones and be like this. Or the gaming, a big one for that too. Again, that can become a distraction for how we feel. Make sense?
Yeah.
I'll just quickly demonstrate, just briefly, just those 3 states and what they look like again. And I'm going to start from the bottom because it's always nicer to go from the bottom to the top with this stuff. Start there. Again, it's going to look like this in the body. Somatically, again, in the body, so you can recognize it in your kids, is like this. Shoulders in, closed, maybe curled in the couch or their bed, right? They're kind of not going to want to look up at you and their device is probably going to be in their hands. It's going to be hunched over like this. They're not going to want to go outside. The body will be closed. The chin will be in. You'll notice that it's like a turtle coming into its shell. If you think of an animal, yeah?
Yeah.
So that's what freeze state looks like in our kids, okay? If you move up the ladder a little bit, we move into now mobilized, and what you'll find is the kids will be tense. This part here will be elevated. This is our protection, this is our armor. So what happens is it protects the heart, the shoulders come up, and your teenager might become reactive, right? and they might say things that can be a bit hurtful or unkind to themselves and others. Yeah?
Yep.
In the last state, our ventral state, it'll look something like this. So the shoulders are back, they're a bit slower, a bit more relaxed, their head is up, they look confident, right? And they have a good gap between their shoulder and their ear. That's a really nice thing to note when you're talking to somebody about that big gap here. If this is closed, you'll find that you won't really want to talk to them because it's not as friendly. So really notice that in your kids as to where that is, and it'll actually show you what state they're in their nervous system.
Is that shoulder position relative to your ear an indicator how relaxed and open, even in adults?
Absolutely, it is, Mick. It's a really big. So we very visual people. Our
Yes.
Just to go a little bit off topic here, we have cranial nerves that are all in this area, and there's 5 in particular that link into our nervous system, and that's our eyes, our nose, our mouth, into our ears, our hearing, and of course our vagus nerve connecting our gut and our brain. The very first thing I notice in you is your face, and that's the first thing you notice in me. When we're looking at other humans for a threat, that's the first thing we notice is that person safe or unsafe, and you'll notice what their body is doing. Yeah, and that in particular is something that is really, really good to know as ourselves, modeling it for our kids. But also, if we're not feeling so great, just have a think about how you're holding your body and how you can cue your body to kind of relax into the moment if it's not life-threatening. If it's life-threatening and you're being chased by a tiger, you are going to need to do what you need to do, okay? But most of the time, there's no tiger chasing after you. It's just work or emails or traffic or your wife or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
And the body does not need to go into tension. So that's what we need to train our kids to do, right? And again, the best way to train our kids is to be the model ourselves, okay?
Yes.
You can only lead a horse to water, and we cannot tell another person what to do, right? So if we want to see change in another person, then we've got to be that ourselves. And at the end of the day, the cool thing is that every single one of you on this call or watching it back has a body, and your kids will notice the state of your body, right? So if we choose not to pick up our phone as much or get outside more, whatever it is, or to be a little bit more relaxed, they'll actually feel that from you. So it's a really cool thing that human to human has always had and will always have between each other, is the ability to co-regulate. That's it in a nutshell, because our nervous system, I believe our nervous system is everything. The body is fascinating. It is just so, so fascinating. And if we can re-cue this to feel safe, then it has a knock-on effect on our thoughts. If your body is open, you cannot have thoughts here that are linked with fear. You just cannot. It is impossible. Because your body is open, you're cueing your body that it's safe, and you might not like what's going on, but you're okay with it.
Yeah.
You land into a place of acceptance, you're like, yeah, okay, I'm struggling with this, but it's okay, right? But if your body is closed and it has gone into that spinal sympathetic state, into that space of reactivity, then that's when the fear is going to creep in. That's when the doubt, that's when the worry, that's when the thinking goes forward, and that's when the thinking goes backward. We go into thoughts of the future and we go into thoughts of the past. We don't do that when we land back into a regulated state. We just do not. That's what's so important. So for many of our kids, and again with my research, they're dropping into a dissociated state because they are overwhelmed with too much gaming or social media coming into their system. What we practice is what will grow. That's always the case. So if we're again practicing 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 hours on this, then that's what grows. And we end up with teenagers and kids who, again, struggle with anxiety or depressive thoughts or behaviors that aren't themselves, is because of Meta, big tech, conditioning this into us for the last 20 years. It's no one's fault but big tech. So again, in our environment with our kids and our teens, the home environment, chase the things that feel good, get outside, eat good quality food, get outside and move, play, come back to a play-based environment, and set boundaries around screen time. They might not like it. They absolutely will not like it. But like anything, with persistence and resilience, things start to change. And I'm pretty passionate about this stuff, and we have to do something now. especially with the introduction of AI. Absolutely streaming. Once again, it's a good tool to use, but unfortunately, when all the images of advertising and everything is AI generated, we are now looking on our screens into a world that's not real, and our kids are believing they're not enough as they are. Maybe that talk resonated with you. I decided to share that out because after jumping on that call, what I learned was that our parents don't really understand the connection between our devices, social media, the content that we see, and the state of our autonomic nervous system and the functioning of our bodies. I'm a movement teacher here in Newcastle, Australia, and I share these talks within schools about how we can actually get back in touch with our vehicle, with our body, and come home. Get ourselves moving out of chairs and off devices to ultimately feel better from the inside out. So if this is something you'd like to see at your school, or for me to come to run a workshop either online or in person, jump on over to my website, megspace.com.au, or get in touch via my Instagram page at move_like_water to organize a chat for our teens, our kids, and our parents today on how social media, big tech, and our devices is affecting our autonomic nervous system and our health. I hope you got something out of this one, and if I can be of any help to you, make sure you get in touch.